I still remember the day. It was February 26th, 2019, over 6 years ago now, which is absolutely crazy. And that date is burned into my memory because it was the day I hit absolute rock bottom. I was broke, had just been fired that day, had a soon to be baby on the way, and I had no idea what I was going to do next. Well, guys, first of all, thanks so much for watching the YouTube videos. Welcome to episode 2 of the channel. So cool. It's been cool over the past few days to hear from people who have watched, and I'm so thankful to have you here. So, today I really want to talk to you about my rock bottom and why I chose real estate. Now, I want to let you know there's going to be some mental health discussion here, so that's a trigger warning for you. Um, but I really want you to understand my journey. So I was working at a bank that day, February 26th, 2019. I lost my job. If you know me, you know I've talked about this, that I was not sleeping with the boss or stealing from the cash register. I am a dreamer. I'm a visionary. And so I always am, thinking about other different things, building the next thing. And in a W-2 job, that's hard. Really, they want you to do the work, do it this way. Don't ask any questions and do exactly what we tell you. Well, guess what? That's very hard for an entrepreneur, especially an ADHD entrepreneur like myself. And so I'm sharing this story with you today because if you've ever felt stuck, scared, or that life is falling apart, you are not alone. And I want to show you how that day, what felt like the worst day of my life, actually became the best. So, of course, let's paint the scene for you, right? That day, I remember messaging my wife. We worked at the same company at the time, and I hadn't done anything wrong. I was in a management trainee program at a bank, had never been written up, had never been disciplined in my almost 2 years in that department. I remember messaging her. We had an internal chat system called Jabber. I remember messaging her and saying I'm about to get fired, and she's like, "That's not possible." I went to the office. That's exactly what happened. They said I wasn't learning fast enough and I was fired. I remember that night. I remember the tears, the emotions, thinking about, what were we going to do next? What was going to happen? She was right pregnant. Our son was then born a few months later in the fall. And I thought about that day and for the days and weeks and months to follow about the stack of bills, the work that had to be done on the house, the baby on the way, and things that had to be done for him. And I just remember thinking, I have nothing left, no paycheck, no job, no savings. And worst of all, I had no plan, right? For me, now again, trigger warning here. Like for me, I really went into a downward spiral of depression and suicidal thoughts for a few months after that. Valerie and that unborn little boy, who's now a 6 year old, really were the only people keeping me alive. To be honest with you guys, I really felt like I had no value. I had nothing to bring to the table. Like, and not only that, I didn't even have a job now. And so if you can relate to that, right, I have been there. In that moment, I felt embarrassed, shame, felt like a failure as a husband, as a soon-to-be dad, as a provider. And so, instead of being that rock to the family, I was terrified. I was angry at myself. I was scared about the future. And honestly, I felt hopeless. And so maybe you've been there too, right? That pit in the stomach feeling where you don't know if you're going to make it, when the pressure is so heavy, you almost can't breathe. And that's where I was. What followed February 2019, was about probably 3 to 6 months of her going to work every day, me applying for jobs every day, her calling me every day to make sure I was alive and I was doing things. And she just would encourage me and say how proud she was of me, how much she loved me and cared of me and trusted me, and that we would get through it. So here's what happens next, right? This is where I want to kind of shift the perspective because I sulked for a little bit for a few weeks. Um, and I remember thinking that day, February 2019, this is the worst day of my life. I still remember calling my friend Vincent Puglisi and saying this is the worst day of my life. And, Vincent knew me and like me starting to start entrepreneurial things like photography. And you'll hear about that as we talk over the next few episodes. And I remember him saying, this is the best thing that ever happened to you. And I remember how ticked off I was. I was like, how dare you? You have no idea. This is not the best thing that ever happened to me. This is the worst. You don't know anything and you're being very insensitive, right? That's what I thought. Well, You look back now, 6.5 years later, and it turns out he was right. But I didn't know it in that moment, right? What I really, I was so frustrated and hurt in that moment. But what I want you to understand, if you're there, is if you're there, I want you to think about your future self and where you want to take yourself, right? Nobody was coming to save me. I was looking for jobs, and I would actually say I can't prove this. I was blackballed by my former financial institution to basically not be able to get a job in finance, right? I still remember that summer. So February, I lost my job. March, April, May, we're kind of interviewing with jobs, praying through that, processing through that. I remember a job with a large bank in the area that was probably about June, maybe July, and I had already started the real estate class at this point. But I remember praying about this, thinking about this, and I was told, I had an interview, did really well with this bank, and they said they really liked me. And so I was like, well, I said to my wife, I said, let's see how this job goes. I still want to pursue my real estate license for the long term. But I feel like if I don't get this job, God is telling me to trust Him and 100% pursue real estate. And I remember, so I had an interview, I think probably 24 to 48 hours after that. They said, we're going to give you the job. So I said, okay, I'll do the real estate thing on the side. I will do the banking thing full time. And they called me back the next day and said, we're really sorry. We hired an internal candidate. We were going to pick you. And a day later, an internal candidate decided to apply. And so that for me was God's way of telling me, you know what, you're supposed to pursue real estate full time. It wasn't easy. We'll talk about that as we get on this journey here on YouTube. But it hit me that like if I wanted something different, I had to create it. If I wanted my family to have a better life, I had to bet on myself. And that realization and that shift from self-pity really to ownership was really that moment where everything started to turn. If you're going through suicidal thoughts or ideation, like please reach out to me or someone that you trust to talk about this because you matter. But let's kind of shift to the job piece, right? When you realize that you have nothing left to lose, I had hit rock bottom, you finally get bold and chase what really matters, right? And so I still remember it. I remember losing that job. And if you've lost a job, you are there. And I remember feeling like I had no value. I can picture it like it was yesterday, right? We're home, we're in the kitchen talking about finances and what we're gonna do, right? We have an unborn child on the way. And that was the starting line, right? It wasn't a fancy office, not a big launch, not a pile of money. I was a broke, scared, soon to be parent deciding that something had to change, right? So here's what I want you to hear. We've all had moments like this, moments where we feel stuck, moments where we feel like there is no future. Maybe you've been laid off. Maybe you've had a relationship fall apart. Maybe a job. Maybe you've started something and couldn't complete it. Maybe you're an ADHD entrepreneur and you always try new things and never complete it. And so you almost are down on yourself. That's like, well, that's great for John and everybody else. I can't do it. Let me tell you, I believe in you. I believe that you can do it. I believe that you can have success. That is what I want you to understand. All of us can do it. And I want you to hear the good news, right? You've seen some of the success. If you know me or like watching the channel, you'll kind of hear how the business has been built. But here's the good news, right? That rock bottom moment, that worst day of my life that turned out to be the best, the day I thought my life was over was actually the day I started to build a new one. It was, right? And so you can do that too, right? Uh, Bet on yourself, right? So when people always ask me, like, well, why did you choose real estate? I really tell them it wasn't a choice, it was survival. It wasn't. Real estate became a path I walked because I had no other option. I've been through, geez, I've probably been through 20 or 30 W-2 jobs from the time I was 16 getting my first job to then when I lost that job at 31, 32 years old, 6 years ago, right? Real estate became the path I walked where I had no other option and I bet on myself. But here's what I want you to understand. The great thing about real estate, I've met with friends. I met with a friend recently and they are working a full-time job and finances are tough and they can survive. But they said, I'm tired of surviving. I want something more. And I dream of a life as they soon join me at eXp Realty and get their real estate license and join our group, the Wolf Pack. I dream of a life where they have this freedom to take their kids on vacation, to do those things, to say yes. And that is what is possible. And if you are struggling, I want you to know that for me, the worst day of my life was also the best. It made me believe in myself. It made me bet on myself. It made me an ADHD entrepreneur who has always known I was like, I did not fit in a box. I'm outside the mold. I want to do my own thing. It made me bet on myself. And again, the politics of a W-2 job where, hey, you did such a great job and you get 10 cent more this year per hour than you got last year. I hated that crap. I hated it. And so for me, what I love about real estate is the only limiting thing on your income is you, right? The only limiting thing on my income was John. And so then I built the hustle in a countercultural way, without cold calling, without door knocking, without paying for ads, without buying leads, all those things. I built it and we will get into that journey. So that's what I want you to take away today. I hope whatever you're facing, I hope you know that I'm thinking of you, praying for you, here to support you. If you're struggling, please reach out to me. But whatever you're facing, whatever feels impossible, you can turn into a new beginning. And that worst day of your life moment, I want to promise you, first of all, if you are struggling, thoughts, mindset, right? Suicidal thoughts for sure. Like, please go get help, get a professional to encourage and support you. Have friends that are thinking of you, praying for you. But I hope you take away that worst day of your life can also be your best if you bet on yourself. And so many of you, so many realtors that I know are ADHD entrepreneurs. They always have amazing ideas. Guess what? W-2 jobs don't like that. They want you to just do the same normal thing every single day. So whatever you're facing, you can turn into a new beginning. And I'm excited over these next few episodes to dive more into my story and how I actually created the success and how I did it in a way that basically no other realtor does. So if this resonates with you, please make sure you hit subscribe and share, because in the next episode, again, I'm going to share why I refuse to cold call, door knock, or beg for business, and how I realized social media could completely change your life and your business if you can grow your real estate business through social media. So trust me, you don't want to miss it. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys on our next video on Friday.